My paranormal experiences have been consistent and varied over my entire adult life and helped really shape a different worldview than I ever thought I would have. So probably the most unexplained experience I have yet to date was about year 2000. And I want to preface it because as I've gone through life as a Christian and as someone that's been interested in the paranormal from the time I remember seeing In Search Of and the first Bigfoot footage in third grade in Clarksville, Tennessee, I read a book on the Bell Witch, which was a local legend there. So having been interested in it, I didn't get to experience things until much later in life. And I didn't think people were lying about their experiences, but yeah, I was going to have to see it or experience it. And I went on a tour of Waverly Hills in a haunted place in Louisville, Kentucky. And I had something try to pull me down a stairwell by a camera that was strapped around my neck. And that really, really opened me up to things in the ghost realm, so to speak, beyond just lights and shadows and tricks and things. So I did research and got into it. I had to find a way to deal with this stuff. And that became pretty consistent in my life. And that really helped me when I had a Bigfoot sighting in 2020. And I think I shared that on this show before. But man, so now here I was knowing ghosts are real and this whole world is real, and then knowing Bigfoot is real. And sandwiched in between there, though, is something that happened to me and my father. And we didn't really understand what it was until I actually saw a television show. And I'll share that here in a few moments. But I want to preface, I was raised as a military brat. My father was one of the first members of Delta Force, was in Special Forces. I was born on Fort Bragg. He was stationed at the Pentagon a lot. I spent time in D.C. And he was from Callaway County in Marshall County, Kentucky. And every summer of my life, wherever we were, we would spend at least the summer there fishing. And he had been raised to fish in these rivers. It's actually Clark's River. There's a West Fork and an East Fork. And your viewers could probably, or listeners could probably find it on a map. And they would fish there. Well, when he entered the military and got a little military experience, we did this on steroids. We would put on the web gear, and we'd wear a couple canteens, and you're wearing a pistol, and you're carrying a couple pouches with your gear and some food and your extra baits. And we get in these rivers and start walking, and you walk all day, and then you have to, he called it humping it back to the vehicle, but sometimes you're covering 7, 8, 10 miles of fishing. And that was just something that I had done since I was 4. It's just a hobby and a lifelong love. Whole family did it a lot of times. So later on, and I'm again around early 2000s, a buddy of mine, and I'd shared this, taking some friends doing this. A buddy of mine decided to try out a little creek called Mayfield Creek, which looked from the road, and we always had driven over it, similar to Clark's River, to where we had fished most of the time. And again, Google is great. Technology is great. If you find Mayfield, Kentucky, it's over in western Kentucky. It's where a few years ago they had the whole town was pretty much destroyed by some tornadoes. If you find Mayfield, you go up on Highway 45. It's a big 4-lane, goes up to Paducah, heads north. You can see where Mayfield Creek comes across. There's actually a big pond right beside it as well, right on the road, and the creek comes across. So a friend of mine and I just decided to try it. We didn't have much time. We had to work that evening. And Man, I caught a big old bass under that bridge. Caught about a 6-pound bass under that bridge, and I always let them go. And we caught a couple more little ones, and we're just shocked. And we're aiming to go up and fish in the pond, but ran out of time. So we were shocked we had caught anything. We're excited. We might have found some new water to fish, and went on to work. Well, I was telling my dad about it, and I was kind of shocked that my dad would want to go, but actually we were talking about it, and he said, hey, let's just run over there. He had a brother-in-law that also had a place over there with a pond, and he figured we would try this creek, and then if it wasn't much good, we could go over to his brother-in-law's pond. So we've got our guns, got our gear, got our stuff. We're setting up for a good day. We're going to try to give this thing a shot and see if we'd found a new fishing place, and we put in there, and no, I didn't catch anything. He didn't catch anything under the bridge. And he starts in, well, Michael, I don't think this is going to be much pumpkin, but let's go upstream and try fishing a little. It's always best when you're fishing a river. If you walk upstream when you're casting your bait, then the bait comes down in a real natural presentation. So definitely at a new spot, new river, we want to be in the best position. And man, we didn't fish very far up this thing and just had not caught anything, and knew if we went to this other place, we would catch fish. It was a stocked pond. So we were kind of looking for a reason to go, but wanting to give it a good try. And we get to this spot, and there's a little creek or a ditch that had come in. Now, this is before I had had any real paranormal experience beyond just watching TV and hearing about things. And the spot is eerie. It opens up. You can actually see it on the map. The creek's about 50 feet to 100 feet wide, and there'll be one side that's got gravel bank, and then the other side will be about, I don't know, 30, 40 feet width of water, and pretty shallow, but then there'll be some holes that are 5, 6, 7 feet deep up against the deepest banks and the bends, and then one side has about an 8 to 10 foot bluff, high bank. Most of these creeks have a high bank and a low bank, the way the water cuts into them. So we're standing, it's really pretty. It's just wide open, river's running, we're in the water. There's a little ditch that comes in there, and we were already thinking about taking it up to the right and then going and fishing this pond a little bit and then going back to the truck. The truck was right on the road. And all of a sudden, we hear something, and then 50 yards in front of us, it was close. Out of the woods to our right comes what I can only describe as a giant Rottweiler. It's black. Its shoulders and head are powerful and big. It tapered off a little at the back. It has no tail. It came out of the woods on a dead run, one of the fastest things I've ever seen in the woods. It came out of the woods, cleared 20 to 30 feet of gravel bank in the air, hit right at the water's edge, and then leapt in one leap across the rest of the water and up that 8-foot bank and into the woods on the other side. And my dad looks at me, and I look at him, and we don't curse much. We weren't ever, that just wasn't part of our verbiage a lot. Even though he was a military guy, he didn't do it around me, at least. And he actually said, "What the was that, Michael? What kind of place are you bringing me to?" And I said, "Daddy, I've never seen anything like that in my life. It moved like a mountain lion or a big cat, but I swear that was a dog." And I'm armed. I've got a .357 Magnum on me. I'm standing there with a decorated Green Beret veteran. He's got a .44 Magnum on his hip, and he said, "Son, let's jump up here and get in this field where we're out in the open and we can see around us. Let's get on back to that pond levee and get back to the truck and get out of here." And that's what we did, and we kept that between us. We didn't tell anybody for years. And then I remember one day, And it hasn't been too long ago. I know the years kind of fly by. I'm 51. I'm one of those guys that thinks the 1980s was just yesterday. And I saw the show Mountain Monsters. And it was an episode, and it was actually called, I believe, the Kentucky Hellhound, a guy in Pike County, Kentucky, which is the far eastern part of the state. I'm in the far western part of the state. But supposedly he had a video, and they showed this video on there, and I don't know if it's real or it was probably before a lot of artificial intelligence and all that stuff. I'd say this was, I don't know when that show was on, 2010, 2015, I'm going to guess, around in there. And it showed a video of what we saw. The guy has a little video. He's going up to a little shed in his woods. And looked like it was in the shed or by the shed, and takes off to the right. And they actually show it on the show. And I remember picking up the phone and calling my dad and telling him. And he caught the rerun then, a few weeks later. And that's what we saw. And it was, I'd say 5 to 7 feet when it stretched out long. And I know it was at least to my waist. So that's why we started telling each other and saying that we had actually seen a hellhound. It wasn't aggressive towards it. It was oblivious to us. It just came through, hit that water, and took off. So there was we weren't scared of it specifically. We were scared of the unknown now that we had seen, and that we didn't think it had turned around or would come after us or maybe even seen us. But we were really cautious and wanted to get out of there, but it wasn't an aggressive or one of your more aggressive or scary encounters like you had. But I tell you what, I'm convinced that ghosts are real. I've got those kind of stories. I know Bigfoot is real now. I've had several encounters, and still the most creepy, unexplained thing to me is seeing what we saw that day in Mayfield Creek. So I think the creepiest thing that has ever happened to me personally that really got me into the paranormal was what happened to me at Waverly Hills. Now, again, as I said, interesting reading, interesting to watch. I've always liked horror movies, for example, but my family, we didn't have a lot of those things that happened. We moved around a lot, so there wasn't a family homestead or farm or anything that we just thought there just wasn't there. A lot of families have stories and experiences and places, and we didn't have that. But I was married before. I'm on my second marriage now, but my first wife and I'm going to say this was 2005, 2006, around this time frame. We actually were starting to have some trouble, and she was really interested in ghost hunters and the TV shows that were on, and wanted to go check out some of these places. So we decided, as a vacation, just her and I, we had 2 children, and we had never been anywhere without the kids, that we would go on some haunted tours. We stayed at a place called the Jailer's Inn in Bardstown, Kentucky. And then we were going up to this Waverly Hills. That's a sanitarium. I get sanatorium and sanitarium mixed up. Maybe it was sanatorium. It was a tuberculosis ward back when that was a huge issue. And then it actually served as a mental hospital. And over 70,000 people had passed away in this place. And it was pretty popular. I don't know how she heard about it or discovered it. This was during the times of the internet, so I'm going to say she might have looked it up. But we got a tour, and it's huge now. It's actually been on all these shows have been at this place. But back then, a family called the Mattingleys, they had purchased this, and they would take you on pretty much private tours if you had a big enough group. So even though we had agreed to go up there, just me and her, she had 3 sisters, and we met them up there. and they had their spouses or boyfriends with them at the time. So we had basically a family group. I think there was 2 other people that they had put in the group. So there was about 10 of us. And we went. So I did research, and I changed batteries out of the flashlights. We bought a brand new digital camera. She had a relatively new Canon film 35 millimeter camera. She had taken some photography classes at Murray State and was kind of into that. So she wanted to get some pictures and some things. And I knew that battery drain was an issue, supposedly, when you're dealing with paranormal and hauntings. So we were ready, and they give you this briefing, basically, and then they take you in, and it was going to be a 4-hour tour of the place. And I mean, it's crazy. It's really creepy. It is as advertised. But I was still really skeptical because a lot of the sounds you were hearing, a lot of the things you were seeing, there was windows in this place, and it was a pretty bright moonlit night. So there would be huge stretches in hallways where light, dark, so your eyes couldn't quite adjust. And there would be some movement or what appeared to be movement, and the tour guide would say, okay, that's a shadow person or that's a ghost. I didn't really believe it still. It was neat. There was supposedly a child that haunts this place that plays with a ball, little rubber like a dodgeball or a kickball. And that thing came rolling out one time, but I'm still thinking there could have been somebody planning to roll this out. So I'm not totally convinced, but thoroughly enjoying it. And we get up, I forget, it was one of the higher floors. And there's a picture on a window where if you take pictures by this window, even though it's up and there shouldn't be people able to stand outside that window because it's so high, if you take pictures there, a ghost face will appear behind you in the picture. And they have several examples of this taped to that wall. So my ex-wife was taking pictures of that, and that's when the cameras started acting funny, both of them. And we just couldn't get them to work. And flashlights had actually blinked and acted funny, but they were okay. Nothing I thought was, I just thought, well, things glitch, things mess up. It was cold. It was really cold that night. So we get up to, I don't remember the room number. I want to say 402, but don't quote me on that. There's a room in this place where a nurse who supposedly was pregnant by a physician there hung herself because of the stigma of that back then and things. And that was a really haunted area. Well, the cameras would not work. And my ex-wife said to this tour guide, I just really don't want to leave, even though the rest of the group was getting ready to head to the next floor. She said, I just don't want to leave. Can I get this thing working? So she handed me the digital camera. She said, I know I can get this film camera working if I reset it or do something. And the tour guide looked at me and he said, you got a flashlight, don't you, sir? I said, yes, sir, I do. He said, okay, go right through this door, up the stairs, over the landing, up this next set of stairs and through the next door. And the tour group will be right there. I'll stay here with her and we'll get this picture. And I said, okay, fair enough. So it's one of those where I forget how many stories, 4 or 5 or 6 stories, but it's one of those stairwells where you've got a set of stairs, a little landing, and then another set of stairs. So there's 2 sections to get to the next floor, and you can look all the way down through the middle to the bottom. I was holding on to the rail with my left hand, walking up closer to the edge that goes down through the middle. And when I got to the landing, something pulled that camera so hard, it almost pulled me over the railing. I thought I was going to drop my flashlight. I remember the clang of my flashlight that was in my right hand hitting the metal, and I'm using my left hand to just hold myself. And I pulled back and went all the way back to the wall. And for whatever reason, I just grabbed that camera and I took a picture to kind of my left down the stairs, and to kind of my right, there was two big flashes. The flash went off. And I caught my breath, and I'm kind of thinking, is there somebody how could somebody have done this? But I realized there's nobody down there with night vision goggles and a huge hook. Nothing physical or human could have done that. So I hug the wall, and I get up the next set, and I open the door, and my sister-in-law at the time, Christina, actually looked at me and said, "Are you okay?" And I said, I guess I was flushed and sweating, and I said, "I think something just tried to pull me down through the middle of those stairs." And I was grabbing the camera, and she lifted. There was a red mark across my neck. I don't have a picture of it anymore because my ex-sister-in-laws took it on their phones and cameras. But yeah, I was shaken up. And it turns out that area, when the guy came back with my ex-wife, that door right there has axe marks in it from where the door will actually, there's a thing there that traps people in that stairwell and is very malicious. And they show you where many times people have called and been trapped in there, and the firemen have to come and they try to axe these metal doors open, and it won't happen. And then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, they're released. So they didn't have any accounts of people dying or being really, really hurt. But I think I was almost their first casualty, because that was a shocking thing. But again, I knew that I had to find a way to deal with this, because I wasn't crazy, and it did happen, and I wasn't going to be in denial my whole life. So it opened a door. It opened a neat door for me, and I was able to now understand that I think there's definitely ghosts, and there's other stuff pretty much everywhere, especially that there had been people. And it really helped me going forward. The coolest thing, I think, then was that I was able to learn, I think, about the differences between, possessions and demonic and malevolent things. I think a lot of people approach this stuff wrong, and they open doors. It's neat. It was really fascinating to understand this. And for me, actually, to then understand how there's a lot of biblical connection, and it didn't really have to really shatter my Christian view. But, there's a big world out there, and you have to be so careful, because when you start messing with this stuff, you're basically opening doors, and something that you want to talk to or speak with or connect with may come in that door, but most likely something that you don't want to connect with or attach to or talk to is going to come in also. And so I was able to learn that real quick and never dabble or get into a situation where I was doing something that would negatively stick with or impact my family and I. And so I'm fortunate that my path took it that way. We live now on a place, which is really cool. I've got a Revolutionary War soldier buried in my backyard in a small forgotten cemetery that I basically discovered and have tried to, I say, restore. I cleaned all the trees out and there's 14 tombstones. So I've been as respectful and done what my time and budget would allow. But it's neat. I've got a chimney that's pre-Civil War that was here on the property, and it's still standing. And I was able to trace the history of this place. And there's been people here since the late 1800s. And that helped a lot, because we've had visitors and company this whole time. I remarried, and this is my place that I live with my second wife, and we've got 2 little girls now that we've had. And I shared this with my wife. I had the place about a year before we met, and she wasn't really into this stuff, but was open to it. And when we started hearing the bumps and things would move and various little things here, she's like, okay, what kind of place do you have me living in? And I explained that I think what is here is just the spirits or the ghosts of the people that were here and that had their family here. And I don't think they were malevolent at all. And the only time she's been scared is I came home one day. We had just had our daughter, and she's sitting on the couch holding her daughter. And she had a look, and I said, babe, what's wrong? And she said, they will not leave the mobile alone. And I said, what are you talking about? And she said, I put the mobile up today over the crib, and they will not leave it alone. Will you please go look at it? And she's actually talking to us. She's like, I don't mind you being here. I just don't want you messing with my baby. And she's, you could hear it in her voice. So I come in here and I get this mobile, and it's got elephants and it's just, a hanging thing over the crib. It's got 4 or 5 little stuffed animals, and you spin a little dial and that turns the music on, and it runs for about a minute. So I spun the dial, let it play out, opened it up, looked at everything, banged on it, beat on it. You could make it ding maybe a little. It'd make a small little noise, but it wasn't playing. And I took it out to her and I said, okay, look, this mobile, it's played out. There's no tension in it. It's not going to make another sound. Let me go hang it up and see what happens. And I hung it back up. I hadn't taken 3 steps out of the room, and ding, da, ding, da, ding, da, ding, 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 ding. And she screamed, and that mobile came down, and that's the only time where I really had to speak to the spirits here. And I just told them, I said, if you've been here and you're a God-fearing, family-oriented, good spirit that wants to share this place, and you've probably been here before me, that's perfectly fine. But if it's anything more than that, this is my place now, and I'm not going to allow it, and it's not going to happen. So please be respectful. And we haven't had thankfully another problem since. So her family comes over, and she's got an older sister, and it'll turn on a little Daniel Tiger. It's the little trolley that used to be on Mr. Rogers, and then Daniel Tiger got big now, and we have that little trolley, and neither one of my kids play with it anymore, but I still try to get it out when her sister comes, just because it scares them, because they will turn that trolley on and mess with that trolley when her sister's here for whatever reason. But other than that, we coexist pretty well, and again, thankfully, it's not the creepy bad things that you hear about. So I think that's pretty much it for anything noteworthy or story-worthy as far as ghosts and things like that.
If you've had a paranormal experience and would like to be a guest on the show, please contact us by going to myparax.com. That's myparaex.com. Thanks for listening.